All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast real estate tip. And on today's podcast, I wanted to break down the NAR lawsuit settlement changes taking place. 11 things that you can be doing right now inside your real estate business, 11 things that you can be proactive with and on to ensure that your real estate business doesn't just survive, but to ensure that you go out there and continue to thrive, to ensure that you go out there and continue to crush and dominate your overall real estate goals. So before I jump into these 11 different things, just a couple quick things that I think are important to bring up before we jump into these 11 different things. Okay, number one, these are just things that I'm doing inside my own real estate business with my own real estate, team here in Phoenix, Arizona. Now it's officially, at least at the moment of me creating this podcast here, it is Friday, March 22nd. So it's been 1 week since this news dropped on us, right? Now, we've been knowing that changes are coming. These losses have been taking place for a long time now, but okay, Friday was like first day of getting some, big clarity on, okay, what these changes are going to look like, when they're coming about, so we can start prepping and planning at a much, much higher level. Now, the difficulty for all of us, and when I'm saying all of us, this podcast is for real estate professionals, so real estate agents, team leaders, broker owners. I know that there might be some of the general public watching this, but when I say us, I'm speaking to real estate professionals here. Right? The difficulty that we have right now is, we've got some guidance. We've got some clarity on, the major changes are that we're going to see, but at the same time, there's a lot of vagueness. There's a lot of uncertainty, right? Like, okay, NAR's, 100 plus page report that they deliver again. Like, dude, there's just so much room open for interpretation, a lot of vagueness, a lot of uncertainty in there. And we're going to get, as this rolls out, we're going to get more clarity on this. We're going to learn more. We got to continue to adapt more, but with the limited amount of intel that we have right now, okay, we can start being proactive with that. We have enough information to start really mapping this out to, again, ensure that we are in the best position possible. So these are just 11 things. Now I've spent, over this seven days now, probably about, 30, 40 hours now. It's been crazy, 14, 15, 16-hour days that, like for me each and every day, been in meetings from 4:30 a.m. till 7:30 at night, with regular work shit, but then also, with my attorneys and with other top team leaders and broker owners throughout the country that, I've got great relationships with, that I respect their opinion, and they're pretty smart mofos, right? And so just mastermind and mapping this stuff out, plus, working with my agents, talk with my agents on this stuff. And again, mind mapping all this stuff out. These are the 11 top things, that we're focused on most right now. There's other things too, but these are the 11 that I think that, okay, with the intel that we have, that we can go apply and be most proactive with to get ourselves, again, in that best position to ensure not just that we survive, but to ensure that we thrive through this. So that's number one. Again, these are just things I'm doing. Right? So you can take that with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that I got a crystal ball. Look, there's because there's so much vagueness, right, and so much still uncertainty yet to come. Okay, I don't want to say in every scenario of this, but there's a lot of speculation that has to kind of take place right now. Now, for me, I do not, and just in case this is helpful for you, because if we want to be proactive, this is one of the best ways I've found, to be able to be proactive, is to not allow yourself to get set in your own personal convictions. Right? So what I mean by this is, okay, maybe you're one of those that's like, oh, dude, buyer agency's going away, so I'm just going to focus on listings. Okay, how do you know buyer agency is going away, right? So like, does it make sense to plan and prep for both? Yeah, right. So I look at, okay, how are all the different ways this possibly could shake out, and let me have a mind map plan for all the different ways. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. I'm going to map out all these different things. So within my own real estate business, now I know that not all of you watch or listen to this do all of these things, but I have a large team. We're 50 agents here in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been running, operating a team for over 19 years, almost 20 years now. I've sold over 7,000 homes. We do a lot of production. We do a lot of business. So when I say these things, I don't want you to, sound like, like it can sound overwhelming. I like to put things in context, right? Because I got a big group of us doing a lot of different things, right? But it's like, okay, well, we do a lot of business through Zillow, right? Do a lot of business through open houses, do a lot of business through, Facebook, paid Facebook ads, paid Instagram ads, do a lot of business through, organic YouTube and organic social media, do a lot of business through sign calls. We do a lot of business through, mailers. We do a lot of business through repeat referral business, right? So, so with that, I'm starting to map out, okay, what does this look like with all these different scenarios? I recommend that you do this. Isn't part of these 11 points. This is how I've kind of come up with these 11 different points, but we're looking at, okay, let's just use Zillow as an example. I know a lot of you hate Zillow and whatever, and everybody can have their own different opinion on it. but we get a good ROI on it, but I get a good ROI. Like everything works, nothing doesn't. So I'm just using this as an example. So okay, I'm looking at Zillow and being like, okay, here's our process and here's how this flows right now. Now these new changes, like here's an example. Okay, how our process works right now. Zillow live transfer call comes in, 30 seconds out of our mouth. We're setting up a showing on that property. We, then go out there, we meet them at that property, use that as an opportunity to develop rapport, develop a connection, and then we turn that into the buyer consult. Well, that's much different than like when I do a Facebook lead or other lead sources where I start with the buyer consult, then we go out there and show properties, right? Each different lead sources can dictate different, processes and strategies to go out there and maximize those results. Okay, well, now if these buyer broker agreement changes, well, that switches that up. Now we have to have a signed buyer broker agreement in place with agreed upon compensation. It's got to be agreed upon, negotiated, and signed, sealed, whatever, before we can even go out there and show a property. So, okay, how are these changes going to impact this? And let's just start mind mapping this out and coming up with the best protocols and best processes to go out there and still maximize conversions, or utilize this as an opportunity to go out there and increase conversions. And there's going to be certain scenarios where we're seeing some of these changes as a bigger positive, right? So then, okay, well, how is this going to impact open houses? Well, if I got to have a buyer broker agreement signed before I can show every single property, is that still the same for an open house, or is that different? Or, like these are all things that we got to start thinking through and going out there and mind mapping and, whatever is with that. Right. Okay. So again, these are just things I'm doing in my own business, right? So then from there, just because I think that this will be helpful with these 11 different things, because these 11 things apply to the buy side of the business and the list side of the business. So this is just a recommendation for you. I do not think it is a good idea for you to have the conviction, right? Just the belief that, okay, I'm just going to focus on listings, buyer agency, buyer reps going away. There's a lot of that out there. A lot of conversations I'm having. I'm hearing it, but whether it be social media, but then also conversations with other people of like, man, I'm just going to ban it. I'm just going to do nothing but the listings, right? I think that that's a mistake. Now I'm not saying like, look, that could be a probability, right? However, I don't believe that that's necessarily going to take place. Yeah, right. Now my opinion is irrelevant, but again, like business could be kind of staying status quo as usual, right? Or maybe the buy side grows, as I'm looking at this and the more information that I get. When I first heard about this news and when these lawsuits first started coming about, I was kind of a little bit more negative on the buy side, with my own internal thoughts of how this possibly could shake out. But the more that I learn and the more that I'm mind mapping this stuff out, and we're strategizing for this, I'm actually extremely damn excited. And then it's like almost daily, I get more excited about the buyer side and the opportunities that these changes are bringing us for the buy side. At least speaking to the real estate community, I do not think that these changes and rules is the best thing for the consumer personally, but I'm mapping this out. I'm like, hey man, there's some big opportunities that this is creating for me in my business, on the buy side, where I can go out there and start increasing revenue by 20, 30, 40, even 50%, on buy side revenue, based on these changes and based on how this model is going through. So my recommendation is to prep for both. Yeah, right. Like dial in your shit, dial in inside your game on the buy side, right? Dial in your shit inside your game on the list side. Okay, so I wanted to bring up those points before I get into these 11 different steps. And look, as I'm going through this, whether they be on these 11 things or just with your overall business, if you're lacking clarity on exactly what you need to do to get from where you're at to where you want to go inside your real estate business, and again, you just don't know exactly what is those actions that you got to take. It's like your business is down here, but your potential is way up here, and you just don't know exactly what you want to do to get from where you're at to where you want to go. I invite you, if you want to take advantage of it, I invite you to schedule a 100% free Zoom coaching call with me personally. Do that at www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. 100% free, 100% zero pressure. It's going to be an epic 1 hour call with us together. We're going to deep dive in your business. I will get you dialed in. I will make sure that you leave this coaching call with knowing exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most profitable fashion possible. So if you want to schedule that, again, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. As soon as you book that, you're going to land on a really important video that you need to watch before we show up for this call, because it's going to help you prep for how this call is going to go, what to expect, what to be thinking about before the call, so we can maximize our time, right? Because it's a deep dive in your business. So the more that, you are prepped for this call, this coaching call, the more value you're going to get out of it. Okay. So let's jump into these 11 different points. And again, some of these, I shouldn't say again, I didn't talk about this yet, but some of these are going to sound like, common sense, but some of them are going to be a little bit more in depth, right? Okay. So number one, dialing in your buyer consultation, right? So with this on the buyer consultation, because Now, some of you may not have awareness of the, I'll be very fast on this because I know most of you have awareness of what these major changes are. But one of the big changes is, again, we got to have a buyer broker agreement signed up front, not just signed up front, but we got to have our compensation negotiated and agreed upon and signed on before we can go out there and show a property now. Yeah, right. So it's going to be that much more important to dial in your buyer consultation. Now, hopefully for most of you, if you've been treating this as a profession, yeah, right. Just like with me, man, I've been doing buyer broker agreements for 17 years and treating my buy side of my business just like the list side. So I go in, I've got a very strict, hardcore buyer consultation process where we're able to articulate the value and walk through that with them to get that dialed in. So my process, just in case it's helpful for you. Okay, I lead off with their dream home form, right? That's really important because it gives us clarity on what they want, why they want it, why it's important to them, which we need that clarity to support them at the highest possible level to ensure that they don't have buyer's remorse. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to these stats, and the stats change based, I've heard different stats, seen different stats based on different surveys and different articles, but it's somewhere between 80 and 90% of buyers that bought within the last 4 years that have buyer's remorse. I never want to have a client. So one of the ways that you can go out there and add value to your clients is being the unemotional professional leader throughout the process that can navigate and make sure your clients aren't making a mistake where they have buyer's remorse. Right. How do we do that? Well, we do that by getting extreme clarity on what they want and what's most important to them, what they want, why they want it, why it's most important to them. So I spent about 40 minutes just doing a deep dive into every aspect of what they're looking for. And again, not just that, I want this location. Right. Well, then, okay, well, what is it about that location that's so important to you? Why is that? Like, just follow-up questions so I can get that clarity on what is most important to them. So then when we go, you go see a property as an example, maybe it has a dream kitchen that's just tricked out and they start falling in love with it. And they're like, oh yeah, this is the house. Right. Well, then because I have the intel that I've had to ask those right questions, now I'm able to go to them. Well, I get that this is a beautiful house, but when we first met, and I'm just bringing this up, not to talk you out of this purchase, right? This is what you want. I work for you. Like, we'll go ahead and make this thing happen. But I also want to make sure that you're not making a mistake. When we first talked about, you buying and going through this process, the thing that you mentioned that was most important to you, why you're doing this move in the first place, is that you were sick and tired of spending an hour commuting every morning to work, an hour commuting home every single evening. So that's 2 hours every single day, 10 hours every single week away from your family. That's just wasted out of your life. Now, this property only shaves off 10 minutes of that, right? This is pretty close to this doesn't really solve the location issue. I know it's got all these amazing upgrades, but are those upgrades worth you sacrificing that still 10 hours every day or 10 hours every single week where you can't see your family? Right now I can circle them back and remind them. I want to make sure that my clients don't have buyer's remorse, right? So, okay, we're going through the dream home form. Then I go through education portion of it. Now the education, each one of these adds value for different reasons. As I'm going through education, now I don't have time to, I could spend an hour on each one of these points. I'm going to go kind of fast here. But hopefully you can grasp this and understand this. Okay, as I'm going through the dream home form, that's adding value. Right. And they're able to see that value, right? Because they can see that I truly care, and they can not just that I truly care, but they can see that, okay, man, this guy's a true professional. Like, he's really breaking down and getting extreme clarity on what I want. Plus, it allows them to get more clarity on what they want. So that's adding value. Okay, then when I go through the education element, that's adding value. Right. So not just that I'm educating them, I'm educating in such a way, right, where it adds value. All right. So like, here's an example. Okay, well, here in Arizona, we got this 10-day inspection period. So I'm explaining on that. Okay, now through the 10-day inspection period, now that's enough time to get all of our inspections done. However, like we've got to be on this, and we've got to be prompt on this, and we've got to be focused and be diligent on this. And then I'll go through explanations, right? Okay, so as an example, get your home inspection, complete and done. Now during the home inspection, maybe the inspector discovers there's cracked trusses up in the attic. So then from there, now maybe we need to come in and get a structural engineer to go evaluate that and check that out. Then from there, then maybe we need to bring in a contractor to go out there and get bids and see what this looks like. So we got to be able to get all of our inspections done, get any type of bids that we need to be on, get all of our due diligence done. And on top of that, we got to come up with what our game plan is, whether it be repair requests, credit requests, or if you decide it's in your best interest to cancel out of this contract, we have to have all of that done within this 10-day period of time. If it rolls 1 second past that 10th day, you've now accepted this property as is. You've waived your right to cancel, do the inspections. You've waived your right to ask for seller repairs. So you're now accepting this property as is. And if you do want out and want to walk away and cancel from the property, now you're going to be, you're going to lose your earnest money. And so I'm explaining that, right, which is all true. But then from there, it also is, like there's a lot that goes into that the general public doesn't have. This is why, a lot of the general public doesn't see the value in us, because most agents do not do a good job articulating through all the shit that we have to do. They don't see all the behind the scenes stuff. They see us showing properties and smiling and making it look easy. And, right. Like they don't see all the blood, sweat, and tears and hours and freaking 18-hour work days that we have to push through. Because, as I'm not speaking to you, saying this about you, speaking that this industry is a general, right? Speaking of generalities here, it has done a poor job at articulating what we actually do for our clients. So when I'm going through that, then then it's hey, but I don't want you to stress about this. Yes, it's extremely important, as I just explained, but I don't want you to stress about this. This is where I come in. This is why you're working with me. I'm going to make sure all this is set up. Everything's done properly. Make sure you're covered. Make sure you're protected. Right. And I'll educate you every step of the way. Then I go to the next thing, then the next thing. So I'm educating, but then I'm using that education to educate them. Yes. But then also articulate my value. Then we go into the commitments. Here's all the things I'm doing to be committed for you. And then boom, now we go into the buyer broker, ask for their commitment back, right? And then you got to think about what's your compensation structure going to be for you on that buyer broker agreement, because we got to think of the different ways that this pans out, right? So, okay, what are you going to do in the event that the listing that they want or the home that they want isn't offering a seller concession, or that seller concession isn't high enough or big enough where it's able to cover your representation fee, and the buyer's got to pay you out of pocket. Okay. So you got to mind map out those. Yeah. Right. But be able to educate those on that and, walk through all the different scenarios, because a lot of different ways that this can play out, but be prepared for that. Right. Okay. Number 2, thinking of ways to level up services to your buyers. Right. So just thinking of, okay, what are alternative ways? Because now I'm looking at this, I'm like, okay, now we've always been able to do this, but for the most part, it's just like, okay, whatever the listing agent's offering, we just take it, the code broke on the thing. Well, now I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I can charge whatever I want to charge now. Right. So, and commissions are always, and this is the disclosure part, right? Commissions are always negotiable, always have. I'm just using this example. So maybe I'm like, well, what if I want to charge a superior service fee? But create a superior service, more of a concierge service, add different things. So instead of getting paid, I don't know, 2.5%, which, average co-broke on a client, maybe I go out there and charge 4 or 5%. If I want to have a superior service, right. Okay. Well, what are add-on services, that you could go out there and add with this, but then from there, it might just get more competitive. We're going to see how the consumer takes this in and what they, there's again, a lot of unknowns here. But we may have to be more, offer more services than we have in the past, and thinking of different ways that we can add those services. Like as an example, okay, in 2020 and 2021, and a lot of you that were in the market during those times had to go through this, right? But during those times, okay, there's 50 offers on every single property, 100 offers on every single property in my market. Like, dude, it's so difficult to get buyers' homes, and there wasn't any inventory, right? So then, okay, we had to go out there and hunt for inventory, right? So okay, that can be part of your services. Mastering the skill set to be able to go out there and hunt and find off-market deals, to go out there and find those off-market deals for your property. Okay, if the property doesn't exist, I'm going to go find it for you. I'm going to do my best I possibly can to go out there and find it for you. Like, what are other, skills that you need to level up and bring in to go out there and earn that commission that's coming out of the buyer's pocket in the event you can't get it from the seller, right? And then again, you're going to have to mind map out and think out of how are you going to handle that? Right? Like, are you going to go work for free? Right? If you have a VA buyer, right, that comes to you, how are you going to handle that scenario and situation? Right. Because now remember, with the decoupling of the commissions, if the seller is paying us a commission as a buyer's agent, right, it's not the seller, like the seller's paying the buyer, seller's paying the listing agent separately. Then how we would get compensated for a buyer representation fee would be, okay, the seller's now paying the buyer, then the buyer is essentially paying us out of those concessions. Okay, that's not allowed for a VA. Right. So essentially, okay, are you going to work for them for free? Right. What is that going to look like? Right. And mapping out different scenarios. Because again, we got to think these things through. And again, that's why I said these are 11 things that you can start taking action on now and being proactive on now. Some are things that you can dial in right now. Some are the things that you're going to have to kind of think through of how you're going to operate with this. Okay. So number 3, dialing in your listing presentation. Now, hopefully you've always had, like, again, some of the shit you've already should have had in place. Hopefully we're already doing buyer broker agreements. Hopefully you already had a world-class buyer consultation in place. Hopefully you already have a world-class listing presentation in place. But just making sure it's honed in and dialed in. I heard a stat the other day, and I don't know how some of these people come up with some of these stats, right? There's some stats where I get it, like when I'm looking at, okay, credit card, like shit that's tracked on a huge scale, but some of these stats, I don't know how people come up with these, but I heard the other day that, it was I can't remember the exact one, but I can't remember the exact stats, but something like, I don't know, 88 or 90% of realtors don't have a buyer presentation in place, like a legitimate, a dedicated buyer presentation in place that they follow each and every time. But then it was like 27% of agents don't even have a listing presentation in place. Just I heard, I'm just like, damn, dude, that's, but that's okay. Our industry's filled with a bunch of people that wing it, a bunch of amateurs. That's right. 49% of realtors last year closed one or less transactions. Yeah, right. And again, those are the ones that are going to be impacted. They're not going to do this. If they haven't taken this stuff seriously already, some of them will adapt with the changes, but a lot of them won't, right? So it's just going to create a bigger piece of the pie for you and I, and create more opportunities for you and I. Like if you're watching this podcast and you're educating yourself on this, you're driven, dude. All right. Like you're not within the amateur, hopefully not anyway. Right? Okay. So dialing your listing presentation, but then also, okay, how are you going to part of your dialing your listing presentation? If you already have your listing presentation in place, how are you going to handle, those compensation and conversations? Because thinking this through, let's just say, okay, there's less buyers that, let's just say this. Okay. VA, we talked about VA earlier. Yeah. Right. Okay. So VA, this is kind of like VA in a position where VA buyers, where they have no buyer representation. Right. So, okay, you get these VAs now, or any buyer, but you got them coming to you direct. Right. Okay. Listing agent is paying you whatever, right? Like maybe you're charging 3%, 2%, whatever, just for you to represent them and to list their property. Well, then now a buyer comes at property that is unrepresented, because maybe we have an uptick of buyers that don't want buyer representation to pay that fee. So right now they're calling you, and they're calling you as a listing agent to open up that door every single time. They got to go show a property, because there's no longer buyer agents to go show those properties. If there's a big influx of this, and this is going to lead to some other points of that I'll cover here later, but okay, if let's just say you're a pretty good producing, individual agent, and you're carrying 20 listings at any given time, right? Pretty easy for a full-time, focus driven individual agent to go out there and stack up, let's just say 20 listings, right? So now you got 20 listings, and okay, how I'm always looking at pricing listings, this can shift based on the market, right? Whether it's a buyer's market, seller's market, whatnot. But, overall, it's like, okay, I really gauge for, okay, minimum of 3, showings a week, but that 3 to 5 showings per week is that kind of sweet spot where we know we're priced right in a normal market. Again, there's extremes of this, but let's just say, okay, you're averaging that, right? So you got these 20 listings that are going to have, let's just say it's on the low end of the 3. So I can do the math in my head. Okay. That's, then let's just say buyer agency, goes away, or it gets cut in half. Let's just say it gets cut in half, okay, well, that's 30 showings now on that week that you've had to go facilitate, open up that door for your listings, right? It's going to add more work, but are you going to do that for free? Are you going to work for that for free? Yeah. Right. Like how are you going to structure these conversations? Yeah. Right. So, hey, here's what I'm charging you to list your property. Yeah. Right. Then, okay, if I have to represent the buyer, right. And the buyer can't pay, here's what maybe that looks like. Yeah. Right. Then from there, like for me, 100%, I'm going to recommend every one of my sellers, at least initially, to see how this shakes out, subject to change. Yeah. Right. But at least initially, I'm going to highly encourage and recommend that all of my listing clients pay a seller concession to include buyer agent compensation. And why would I do that? Right? Because if we don't, we alienate those agents. And this is just how I explain to them. Look, yeah, you don't have to pay, and I'll just use old terminology versus the new terminology. So yeah, you definitely don't have to pay, a buyer agent fee, a co-broke fee for a buyer's agent, but if we don't, right? So in my market, there's 60,000 agents. So you calculate how many agents that you have in your market. So we have over 60,000 agents here in Maricopa County in our MLS system. Now I've just alienated all 60,000 of those agents and all of their buyers, because if we're not offering them buyer composition, like they're not a compensation, like they're not going to show your property. We're just alienating. Now I'll do everything I possibly can as your agent to go out there, market your property, and find you a buyer. But look, when we have 60,000 other agents working hard to bring a buyer as well, because we're co-oping, my commission with them. Then from there, it greatly exponentially increases the likelihood that your home's going to sell fast and sell for top dollar. Now it's their choice, right? But we got to be able to map out, okay, what are these, how do these conversations go, and have the skill set to articulate the value and negotiate that. But then from there, okay, now if I'm stuck, now doing two double sides on every single transaction or more transactions. How are you going to handle that? Right. So just things to be, mapping out there. Okay. So dial in. So number 4 is dialing in your skill set on selling the value of the appointment. Look, this might be, knowledge for some of you, but for a lot of you, and for most agents that I see out there, like they don't know this. They may say they know this, but they don't understand this, right? So real estate is a 2-step sales process. Step number 1, you're selling the value of the appointment. Step number 2 on the appointment is where you articulate your value and go in for the close, right? So up front here, like so far, we've talked a lot about, okay, once you get to the presentation, but up front now it's going to be, and this is just my theory, but I truly believe through all this, it's going to be that much more important to sell the value of the appointment, especially on the buy side. Yeah, right. Because you can have more buyers with media, with news, right. And just how it's going to be perceived and how it's already being perceived, of not seeing the value in a buyer's agent. Right. So I'm selling the value of the appointment, why it's a benefit for them for the appointment. I'm not selling me. This is a mistake that a lot of agents make when it comes to their lead gen and lead follow-up, because lead gen and lead follow-up exists to set an appointment, right? You don't sell yourself, right? You sell the value of the appointment. Then at the appointment, that is where you are articulating your value and going in for the close, aka selling your value, right? And going in for the close. So you're gonna have to dial in that skill set. Think about, how do I dial in that skill set to sell that value of the appointment so I can book more face-to-face meetings, so then we can be face-to-face and truly articulate our value and go out there and convert more people. My theory is, and I'm, pretty, confident on this theory, that is going to be that much more important. And even if not, it's a skill set you guys should all have, right? Like, if you want to have higher lead conversion, convert more closings and convert, whatever, and, make double, triple the amount of money in the same amount of time, like get that skill set dialed in. Okay. So number 5, dial in your processes. I should say processes and systems, right? So our processes are step-by-step actions that we do to get the desired result that we want. Then the system is where those processes live, right? So if you look at this, the system is the cookbook. The processes are the recipes inside the cookbook, right? This is going to add more work to all of our plates. So everybody's like, oh, well, these commissions are going to get less. We have to pay less. Well, I don't know. Are you willing to do more for less? Yeah, it's all right. Like people, again, I get what I don't blame the general public for having their views and the perception that they do. And this is like, okay, like a lot of people are going out there and paying attention to, what I'm really paying attention when I'm, seeing all these videos and on YouTube and whatever, like what I'm paying attention is what's the consumer saying? Like I'm not really, that's where we spend a lot of time around. Like, what's their perception? What are they saying? And I think, if you get on, one comment thread, you can see pretty quickly, like, it ain't good. Yeah. Right. So with this though, but I don't blame them for having that thought process. I blame us. And I'm not saying you and me per se. I'm just saying us as an industry. We've done a very bad job at articulating our overall value to what we bring to the table to offer, our clientele and show them how hard we're working for them and all of that stuff. Right. But with this, there's going to add more shit to your plate. Like I just said, okay, you got a listing now. You're going to have a contingent of buyers that are going to choose non-representation. You're going to have to go then open that door, or are you going to have your seller open that door? Like, right. Like you got to just figure out what your process and your systems are. Imagine this now. Okay. You got every buyer agent calling you now on your listings, but before they're going to show it, they're going to call you and then ask, what's the seller concession amount? And is there, what percentage is going to be applied towards, or can be applied towards buyer representation agreement fee, because my buyer's not in a position to be able to pay that, or vice, whatever. They're going to be starting asking. That's going to be a prequel for them to even go look at your listing now. Okay. You're going to have to field more calls. You're going to have to, or are you going to have a system in place for that? Yeah. Right. And this is where we need, they said things like, okay, you can have, if it's your listing, you can have it on your own website and then disclose on there what concessions are and what buyer agent representation compensation is going to be. But then I want a little bit more. What does your website mean? Yeah. Right. Can I create a Google Drive folder that I just update every single day, or a Google sheet that's a view only that's updated every single day? Right. Or per property, where then they can just click on that in the MLS and that's my Google Drive folder, or they got to be official on my website, right. Like how can we get more effective and how can we be more efficient through our system of processes so we can still handle volume, especially if what a lot of people are predicting, that commission rates are going to be compressed and there's going to be more discounters. And okay, well then if let's just say that happens, right? I'm not saying it's going to, but I'm just saying, let's just say that does happen, right? Well, now you got more work added to your plate. and lesser commissions, right? Now, that you can make a ton of money discounting, right? There's Walmart and there's Whole Foods in every industry. There's Mercedes and there's Honda. Does Whole Foods make more than Walmart? No. Yeah, right. So I'm not one of these. I'm not saying a discount either, right? I'm saying run your own model. But the key, if you are going to go discount, which I know gets a bad term in our industry, but look, I don't have, to me, it's just business. I understand that there's, the discounters and the luxury in any market, and there's room for all of them to be successful. So then from there though, but the key to discounting, right, is then volume. You got to be able to do more volume. So you got to be operating effectively and efficiently, which you should be doing anyway. Okay. So then from there, dial in your process. Number 6, dial in your negotiation skills. Don't need to go deeper on that one. I think you guys can all get that, right, and understand that. Something that hopefully you already had in place, but if you haven't, it's going to be that much more important, right? Also, not just from how do we get paid? That's where I'm seeing the mistake of most agents going right now is like, well, I got to dial my negotiation skills so I can negotiate how I get paid. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I get that, and that's part of it. But the reason you're getting paid is so you can go negotiate a fantastic fucking deal for your client, right? So like, that's what I mean by negotiation skills. Like, you need to, like, if we're trying to get paid, but we're not earning our fee, well, then we don't deserve to get paid in the first place. Yeah, right. So when I'm talking about negotiation skills, yeah, of course, on the compensation. But what I'm really meaning here is your negotiation skills so you can fight like a freaking shark, like a freaking pit bull for every single cent, every single penny for your client, get them that best damn deal and go out there and earn your fee. So I have a buyer that's like, hey, I was happy to pay Joshua Smith 10 grand, even though I had to pay that up. I was happy to pay him that 10 grand because that mofo went out there and saved me $40,000 on the purchase of that property. So I paid him 10, saved 40. So I still overall, man, if I wouldn't have paid him that 10, I would have paid $30,000 more for this house. So they don't look at this as I paid Josh 10. Like, yeah, I paid Josh 10 so I could go make 30. That's a damn good ROI. Thinking of it that way, right? When people are like, well, how do I add more value? Should I, I don't know, give people a utility checklist so it's easier to know what utilities to turn on. Well, hopefully you've already had some of that shit in place in the first place. If not, people have the internet. What I'm talking about really of value is like get people the results that they want, right? Like get them the homes that they want so they're not having remorse. Get their home like obsess over what do I got to do to become brilliant at helping them accomplish their real estate goals and get them the best damn terms on accomplishing those goals. Yeah, right? Okay, so number 7. Dial in client acquisition strategy. So by client acquisition, I mean, this could be your lead gen, lead follow-up, right? Which is always the most important, that's like the number one skill set. I tell every agent, new agent, every agent out there. Now, unfortunately, most that have been doing this 40, 50 years, never dialed this thing in. Like most should never do. And then that's why they stay small for their whole career. I'll tell new agents all the time on my team. They'll be like, well, man, this agent's been doing this 30 years. I'm like, look, it doesn't matter. Most agents in this industry have repeated the same shitty, mediocre year for just 30 years straight. Yeah, right. Like they just figure out a way to survive, but they're so broke, they're still barely hanging on, right? Like years of experience, doesn't really mean anything in our industry. Sometimes it does, right? But in most cases it doesn't, right? So we got to dial this in by client acquisition strategy. I mean, you got to get damn good at your ability to go out there and acquire clients. So this is going to come down to, because there's disruptions and changes throughout my whole 20 years of doing this and seeing so many different markets. I get asked all the time. Let me say this another way. I get asked all the time, Josh, what is your favorite, lead gen, aka what they're actually asking is client acquisition strategy, right? Because when I say client acquisition, I'm talking about lead, like everything from lead inception to getting that client to sign on that dotted line, right? So that includes your lead gen, lead follow in presentation, right? But with that, people are like, well, what's your favorite strategy? My favorite strategy is the one that's most effective based on the economic and overall market conditions that we're experiencing. Okay, what I'm doing today is vastly different than what I did 3 years ago. Okay, like here's one. My whole entire 20 years of doing this, I've never targeted divorces up until about a year ago. Now I'm targeting divorces, and it's one of our best converting listing sources out there. People going through divorce, and why? Right. Why is it so converting right now? Number one reason for a divorce is financial hardships right now, with being the most unfortunate time to be alive as a U.S. citizen. So it's the hardest financial time for any of us to ever exist in any of our life. Like that, anybody that's alive today. Now, your current personal situation, you may have had tougher times where you had personal financial hardships worse than you're experiencing right now, because now maybe you're more established and you made it and you're crushing it financially. I'm just speaking in generalizations. No time have we ever had a period of time, where it's been more expensive to just live life than right now today. So divorces, with the number one reason of divorce being financial hardship, they're on the skyrocket, right? Then from there, I'm like, okay, well, when they're going through that divorce, the probability of them not living in under that same rooftop, as they finalize this divorce, very high. Probability of them needing to sell and split that asset is to go through this process, very high. We're in a market right now where you've got to find those that need to sell, not those that want to sell, but those that need to sell. So when I'm talking about client acquisition strategy, okay, like identifying, what are the best methods, like what are the best sources, the best niches to go after, but then making sure that we've got the best, so we got it strategy, and you can hear me talk about this all the time on the podcast. I call it the three-legged stool. We got strategy, process, skill set, right? So strategy is, who am I targeting that has the highest probability, of needing my services in this market? Okay, then boom. And the secondary thing is process. How long, how frequent must I follow up to maximize conversions? And then number three, mastering your skill set. So how effective you have conversations, negotiation skills, presentations, all those things to, again, maximize conversions. You miss one of those, okay, you're going to be poor at client acquisition. Those are the three-legged stools to client acquisition. Right? But when I'm talking about dialing in client acquisition, not just those three things, but asking yourself, right? Okay, like maybe your business, maybe you're in a military town and your business has been really focused on VA buyers, right? Okay. And I'm not saying to abandon it. I'm saying, okay, figure out a plan of how that's going to work and how you create a win-win for that thing. Or if you can't, and you don't want to just start running a nonprofit and working for free, okay, then figure out, at least if you own a nonprofit, you can still pay yourself a salary for owning that nonprofit. I mean, now you're not working for free. You're actually paying money, right? Like you're because you got to pay for your gas, you got to pay for your time, you got to pay for all the systems. So it's not, nobody will work for free, right? It's not even about working for free. It's now you're paying to work. You're not getting paid. You're paying to go do this shit, right? So you're going negative. It's not even just zero. It's far below that, because now you're going to the negative. So dialing in your client acquisition strategy. Okay, number 8, dial in your knowledge of contracts. And again, explanations. These kind of pinpoint or kind of coincide with some of these other ones. But what I discovered, as I went through this is, and when I'm saying I've discovered this, right, I'm talking about with my own team. Just being honest with you guys, I just saw some holes recently, as I started, working with my agents on this stuff. I thought we always did a really good job at making sure agents understand the contract line by line. Like, I have hours of training on this line by line. What does this mean? How exactly do you explain this to your clients in simplistic terms? Well, I guess I'm not doing as good a job as I thought, man. Most of my agents have it dialed in, but I was actually shocked to see the percentage of my agents, which wasn't a huge percent, but about 20% of my agents that really didn't have this dialed in. Right. So I'm like, okay, I need to get everybody, I need to make sure everybody in my organization knows that shit and is able to, know inside now, articulate that value, explain that value, no longer just DocuSign over crap without explaining it, right? So get to know your contracts inside now, and with simplistic but effective ways to explain those, because that verbiage to us, like when I read through a contract and that verbiage, okay, it all makes sense to me, and right? But it's kind of like you go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh, well, you got a tear in your I don't know, upper left quadrant of your gluteus maximus, right? Like, what the fuck? Like, can't you just say ass cheek, bro? Right? Like, right? So, so explaining it in simple terms, where we don't have all the freaking real estate jargon that people don't explain. Like, we want to make sure that they understand it, that they explain it. So we need to understand at a high level. But then, one of the most effective ways of teaching is to be able to take something that's complex, but then be able to simplify and break it down in simple, easy to understand and follow terms, where it's like an 8th grader can understand it, or 13, 14-year-old can understand it, right? Okay, so number 9, niching down. So identifying, okay, who has the highest probability of, so niching down just means, okay, like what is that target market that I'm going to go out there and hit? And when I niche down, I'm always looking at, okay, who has the highest probability of needing my services in this marketplace? But then I'm going to go to a very specific niche within that, right? So the more that we niche down, the reason that niching down is important is the more that we're able to articulate or identify what that pain and pleasure is, because sales is just pain and pleasure, experiencing pain with their current situation. We're out of that pain to the pleasure, right? Real estate, our job is just to articulate we're the best guide to get them from pain to pleasure. So the more that we understand them, the more that you niche down, the more that you can get that intimate, in-depth knowledge and intel on what that pain and pleasure is, what the block points are, the removing points of them not moving forward, so we can identify those, move those down, allows you to go out there and create your unique selling propositions. So I just believe it's going to be more important to niche down at a higher level than it has in the past. It's always been important. But I believe it's going to be that much more important. Okay. The last two will be quick here, I promise, because I know we're going long here. Okay. So number 10 is to dial in time management skills. Right? Got to dial this in, man. Like I said, if shit's going to get crazy here, like it's in the end, this is my theory. I'm a crystal ball, but everything I'm seeing, when I say crazy, I mean more work for the same amount of money or less money, or depending on how I structure this. I plan on making more money through this, and charging premiums and having, different menus of services. And, like my mind's going 1,000 different ways. I'm mapping this stuff out, and I'm really excited about it. Right. But I also understand there's going to be a lot more tasks. So I got process and systems, but I'm really going to have to manage my time management skills, and so forth. Because we're all about to get, busier as we get more stuff onto our plate. Okay. Then the last thing, number 11. So this is kind of a few things, to compile in here. So be productive and focus on the opportunity. So like my coach, longest coach I ever had, best coach on the planet. So if you guys are ever looking for a great mindset, peak performance coach, so she's not necessarily, when I say not a real estate coach, she coaches a lot in the real estate space. She's absolutely amazing, absolutely brilliant, but she's a psychologist by degree, but her niche and specialty is helping entrepreneurs and executives in leadership positions, and for keeping our minds, like keeping our A game mental. I always get asked all the time, like, dude, like how do you just, stay so focused and have such clarity? And I'm like, dude, she's my secret weapon, man. She's been my coach for 7 years, longest coach I've ever had on anything in any aspect of my life. So Camille Rose Taylor, you guys can go check her out. She's absolutely amazing. She's been on the podcast a few times. But Coach K, as I call her, Coach Camille, always says, okay, there's a big difference between destructive questions and quality questions, right? Destructive questions are going to be like, oh, why me? Right? Why is this happening to me? Well, quality questions are okay. Like, what do I need to do to be proactive at making this, like what do I do proactive to still hit my goals regardless of the situation, right? So stay focused on the opportunities at hand, right? Like, okay, like right now, let me give an example of this. Right now, I am not letting an ounce, a second of my mental energy, time, or focus going into, oh, did NAR sell us out? Oh, why did NAR do this to us? No, like I'm not saying that, maybe they did, but right now that should not be my focus, right? And I recommend it not be yours. It's like, okay, if the house is on fire, step number 1, you get you, your family, your pets, the hell out of there to safety. Then once everybody's out and everybody's to safety, then you go figure out who the fuck started the fire. So I'll go worry about that shit once I got all this dialed in. I'll go make up my opinion on NAR, whatever. Right now, though, I got to focus on the things that I can control, because whatever my opinion is of NAR and through all of this, right, it doesn't change the fact that these are the changes that are here. So right now, I'm going to be productive. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to control the things that I can control and make sure I got my right energy, attention, and focus, not on some victimhood, whiny bullshit of, oh, I can't believe they sold us out, right? And again, I'm not saying that that's not valid for people to have those thought processes, right? And I might have those same thoughts in 4 months or 5 months from now or 6 months from now, right? But I keep getting asked, well, what do you think about NAR? What do you do? And I'm like, dude, I don't fucking know. Right? I wasn't in those rooms. I don't know. Right. And nobody really does. Yeah. Right. But I was in those rooms. I don't know. I'm not trying to give them I'm not trying to say that they're awesome and I'm supporting them. I'm just saying right now, I don't have time to make an opinion about them yet, because I got to stay focused on my shit, the shit that I can control, and getting my stuff dialed in, right. And then once my family's to safety, right, got out of the house, then I'll go find out, who created the fire, who started the fire, and who I want to point the finger at and blame, which I don't know if that does any good either, right? But I'll make my decision at that point, right? So, focus on what you can focus on, be proactive. Then from there, embrace change. Look, you may not like this stuff. Dude, I don't like social media. I can't stand it. Can't stand any element of it. Not like it's a great business tool. Allows me to grow the hell out of my business. So I use it for the business tool that is. When I say I don't like it, I'm talking from an entertainment aspect. I don't like to go scroll. I don't give a shit what, It's just, like, I just don't get it. Just doesn't do anything for me. I don't enjoy it. It makes my head feel even weird. Like if I go on Twitter for 10 minutes and I get done, like my fucking head feels weird. I feel like it's just, whatever. Like I just don't like it. Right. But it's irrelevant if I still use the tool to grow my business. I go out there and create 26 pieces of content a day, distributed between the different repurposed between the different platforms. I use the shit out of it because it's a necessary tool, or not a necessary tool, an important tool, a very valuable tool to go out there and grow and scale my business. So my opinion of the thing is irrelevant. So what I'm saying here is like, you don't need to like these changes, but you still got to embrace them. Right. So like, I do not think personally, I think that I'm not going to go too tinfoil hat, on you guys right now, but I think that these changes at the time that they came about is very intentional. I do not think that these changes came about as a benefit for the general public, right? I believe that the DOJ has been weaponized against, us, is not just us as realtors, but, American people. I think that this is a way to go out there and make it harder for home ownership, harder for first-time buyers, harder for, because I believe that the powers that be are trying to bankrupt all of us so they can, usher in their own version of, Roosevelt's New Deal. But this New Deal is going to look a whole lot something different because they're going to have to pull off some type of a debt jubilee because the global debt is like mathematically impossible. It's just out of control. And again, that could be a 6-hour podcast for another time, but I don't like, am I happy about this at a high level? No. Right. I think it fucks over the general public much more than it fucks over us as real estate agents, right? Like, as I said, I'm mapping this shit out. I'm like, oh shit, here's what creates way more opportunity. Like, I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to go increase my margins 20, 30, 40% with the same amount of work, with these changes now they open up for us. Who it's going to fuck is the general public even more. Right. With that. And again, that's just my belief. So whether I like it or not, that's irrelevant. It's here. I got to embrace it and figure out how to adapt and pivot so I can still serve and support my clients at the highest possible level at navigating them through this and go out there and make my real estate goals a reality no matter what, right? So then from there, lastly, pay attention, stay fluid. A lot of changes that are going to come about, right? Like right now we've got this direction that we've got, the limited direction that we got, but there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of uncertainty. So there's going to be a lot more that's coming at us that we're going to know. And my recommendation is to, not listen to, YouTubes and podcasts, and, I'll be creating more, as I'm learning and shit that I'm doing. I'll keep you guys up to, abreast of what I'm doing here, up to speed of what I'm doing. But then from there, pay attention to go to, what's it, facts.realtor or whatever. Pay attention to what those changes are and talk with your broker, talk with other, like what am I doing right now? Yeah, I'm paying attention. I'm masterminding with as many of the top in this industry that I know that I have great relationships with, that I respect, that I know are fucking intelligent, that I know are, going to navigate through this well. So both on the team leader front, both on the brokerage front, I'm talking with, my real estate attorneys. I'm talking with, trusted advisors I have in this real estate space. Plus I'm paying attention with what NAR is releasing, what they're saying, which is very little, but and I'm not saying that like maybe they can't, right. And I would understand if they can't until the court approves this of, might be opening up a can of worms for them to start training us on this shit until that court approval comes into place, right? But I'm paying attention to that. And yeah, am I listening to other people's intakes on podcasts? Sure. Yeah, right. But just, pay attention, right? And then stay fluid, right? Because again, there's, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but with these lawsuits, this just exempted, or the only protection offered is the copycat, seller lawsuits, right? This has nothing to do with the buy side lawsuits. Plus I think this opens us up. I could be wrong on this, but as I'm looking through this, I'm like, shit, this actually opens us up for a lot more lawsuits. Like this is, I don't know. I could be wrong, but as I'm looking at this, I'm like, shit, man, this seems like less transparency and worse off for the general public, not better. Like, I'm like, dude, like, who knows? Who knows what future lawsuits come? More changes coming, more. So that's what I mean. Stay fluid, man. Yeah, right. By fluid, it's like we're like water. We just flow. Yeah, right. Okay. All of a sudden, the bank turns this way. Okay, the water just keeps flowing. Yeah, right. Got a rock here. It flows around it. You got, right. Like, just how it changes, always inevitable, always happen, always is, always will. So, anyway, I hope that this is helpful. Again, if you are an individual agent, team leader, or brokerage owner, and your business is not exactly where you want and need it to be, and if you want to schedule a 1 hour free Zoom coaching call with me, where it's going to be just me and you talking about nothing but your business, your unique situation, where you're at. And again, doesn't matter what level you're at, whether you're brand new and haven't sold a house yet, or if you're, team leader selling 600 homes a year and you want to scale to 1,000, or a broker owner that's at 500 agents, you want to scale to 2,000, doesn't matter what level that you're at here. I got your back. I will get you dialed in. And on this call, we're going to break down what your business currently at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals and visions are for your real estate business, what you're currently doing, what your biggest obstacles are. Then from there, I'm going to walk you through what my exact recommendation, like if we were to switch shoes, if I were you in your position, here's exactly what I would do to get from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. So if you're lacking clarity of exactly, like if you don't know each and every single day what you must do to win inside your real estate business, like you need to book this call, right? Because otherwise you're going to get punished and you might not make it through this transition, right? You got to know. And I'm not saying just through the call. I'm saying you just need to know. Now I'll get that dialed in on this call, but you need to know each and every day what you must do to win, to go out there and make your goals a reality, right? That's what pros do. And if you don't have that level of clarity, okay, that's probably going to get much, much harder for you throughout these changes and through the economic hardships that we're continuing to step into. So if you want that type of clarity, go ahead and schedule this call, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. Now, full disclosure, we're going to spend 50 minutes breaking down all that, getting you fully dialed in. It's plenty enough time to get you fully dialed in, where I promise you this, you will not leave this call with not knowing exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go. Last 10 minutes, I'm going to spend a few minutes just walking through, hey, here's what my coaching program is about. Here's what it entails. Got several different options for you, whether you're, needing something that's extremely affordable, that can get you dialed in and turn your life and turn your business around. Or if you're looking for, one-on-one high end, or also partnering opportunities for, team leaders and broker owners, so different array of different options there for you. But it's, hey, here's what I have. If it's something that you're interested in, cool. If not, that's okay too. We can still be friends, but I promise you either way that this will be a game-changing call with me for you on this. So you got nothing to lose, but everything absolutely to go out there and gain. So again, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. All right, guys, keep crushing it. Keep kicking ass. I will see you next time. Peace.